This is Duke University.
Welcome everyone to this special edition of Tell Me More. We are here with special guest and Duke alum, Anthony Giannotti, and we're going to talk with him a little bit today about his career journey and the decisions that he made along the way and how he used different skills and his training and education here at Duke to help him. And I'm joined by my colleague, Rudi Rudisill.
Hey everybody.
So thanks for joining us, Anthony.
Happy to be here.
It's a hot summer out here, so we're glad that we can be inside hosting this conversation. Why don't you start by just telling us a little bit about yourself, your career now?
Sure. Yep. So my name's Anthony Giannotti. So I live in central New Jersey now. I have a wife and two kids, 12 and 10, and a dog and a black lab. Can't forget her. I work for Johnson & Johnson in their consumer health side. So I lead a group called Future of Self-Care, which is basically looking at what are all the new things that we want to do and we want to deliver to consumers that isn't part of the current, what people think. When we talk about self-care, it's a lot of the OTC drugs that you can buy in CVS or Walgreens or Target. And so we're looking at what's next, right? What do people want from a wellness perspective in terms of new supplements and new technologies? What do they want from cosmetics? What do they want from telemedicine and devices and diagnostics? And so a lot of that is thinking about who's doing great stuff out there from a startup perspective, what's happening in places like Duke or MIT or Stanford in terms of new technologies, and what can we do to help those small companies or those academic institutions take what they have and then scale it and make it more accessible for people all over the world. So it's great. So it's fun because we get to work with great people inside the company, as well as get to talk to a lot of people outside the company.
Definitely.
Excellent. Yeah. So you didn't just hop right into that career. Can you tell me a little bit of a trajectory or path of how you got to that?
Yes. So I guess I'll back up. So I came to Duke for the biomedical engineering program. Actually, was one of the things that really drew me to the campus, in addition to the fact that it's a fantastic campus and an awesome institution. So I came here, did BME undergrad, ended up staying here for BME grad school. Actually just had lunch with my grad school advisor, which was great. So we still talk and we still catch up. And so as part of kind of my grad school, a lot of the work was on infectious disease prevention and material science and really thinking about health impacts of engineering and how you can use engineering to make health impacts. And we were looking at HIV and STI prevention. And so that was something that I ended up being really passionate about, really interested in, and wanted to continue that. Ended up having an opportunity to stay at Duke and work in the Med Center on HIV vaccines in the vaccine group here for 2 years, and then made the decision that I wanted to maybe go into industry. Not because I didn't love what I was doing in the lab, but because I wanted to see what it would take to actually bring things to market. And so I had an opportunity to go to J&J, took another postdoc. So a lot of companies will actually have what they call postdoctoral positions, where they take people out of either recent PhDs or current postdocs, and they give them focused projects. And it's kind of an opportunity for you to try to see if you really know what you're getting into, moving into an industry position. So did that for a little bit, ended up liking it, and moved into a full-time role at J&J. And I've had the opportunity to move across multiple different types of businesses. So we have, I was on kind of a topical care business, which is kind of wound care. I've done intimate health, done oral care, skin care, and now self-care. And the nice thing is I've worked in very, very early stage, like looking at early technologies and figuring out, do they actually work? And are they feasible? All the way through the final thing of like, okay, how do we actually launch something and put it in a package and get it out in the market? And so over the past 12 years, that's kind of been my progression at J&J.
That's really awesome. It sounds like each one of these pivots has sort of helped you progress through all those different phases of the process. We talk a lot with our students about pivots.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to share a little bit about what those pivots were like? How did you know you were making the right decision to pivot, all those things?
It's hard when you're in the middle of it, I would say, to know that you're doing the right thing. And I think it's always a little bit scary. I think what I've seen every time I've made a change is I typically look for something where there's interesting, I think it's going to be a challenge, or like I'm going to learn something new, or I don't know something about it. And then you jump into that, and look, it's always going to take you, you're always going to do it. And the first couple of weeks, you're going to be like, oh my goodness, like what the hell did I just do? I have no clue what I'm doing. I'm a fraud. I'm an imposter. And you're just trying to make sure nobody notices for a couple of weeks while you're trying to figure it out. But I think after a couple of months, you start to get competent, right? And you start to understand, and you start making contributions. And so you almost have this growth curve. At some point, and it's different for everybody and it's different for every job, you may feel like you start to plateau, where you're like, I can do this job, I'm good at it, I know what's going on every day, but it's not challenging and it's not hard, and it's, you feel like you're getting restless, right? Like, and you're looking around at different things. And I think that's kind of a signal to you of like, okay, maybe it's time for you to think about what else could you do. And it doesn't necessarily mean you need to leave your job. I mean, it could be as easy as saying like, talking to your manager, talking to somebody else, talking to our mentor and being like, hey, look, like what else is out there? What else can I do? And finding something that way. And I think what I've tried to do is think about what you have, not just from content knowledge. And I think that's a big thing from undergrads and PhDs where you're like, I'm an expert in X, but you're also good at identifying problems, solving problems, talking to people, collaborating, like all of these things that you can transfer anywhere. And so once you figure out like that's what I'm good and that's what then you can kind of go to somebody else and be like, look, I might not know what you're doing, but I have all these things that I think can help you. So why don't you give me a shot? And I think and then the process kind of starts over again, because then you do the pivot and you're like, oh my goodness, I have no clue what I'm doing. But then you learn.
Nice. The growth cycle.
Yeah, it's kind of like the growth. Like if you don't jump into something and you're a little bit scared, it means you didn't push yourself enough. Yeah. Right? It's almost a sign of you did it right.
Yeah.
And what would you say some of those, you touched on imposter syndrome, you touched on that growth curve almost. Tell me a little bit about those direct skills that you feel like transferred from your program into your role.
No. So I think one of the things is a comfort in not knowing, right? Like I think that's really important. Walking into something and being like, I know this is a problem, or I know there's a need here, or I know this is something in search of a solution. I don't know how to do it yet, right? And I think it's getting to the point where you're saying like, okay, well, what do I know? What can I pull together? Who can I talk to? Who else is an expert, right? And that could be somebody who has been in the lab for 15 years. It could be somebody I love calling tech support, right? Like, so you can call, technical service, like just call around and start putting the pieces together. And then you realize that you're starting to connect the dots. Mm-hmm. And I think that's such a huge skill. And it's something that actually makes you stand out, I think, in a lot of organizations, because people tend to be a little bit scared of not knowing, right? So I would say comfort with ambiguity is one. I think being able to talk to a wide range of people, right? Like, so, like, if engineers can talk to engineers, that's awesome, right? Like biologists can talk to biologists, but like if you're able to also go, and it could be something for undergrads to think about, like take courses all over the place, right? Like, because if you can understand kind of where the finance person is coming from, if you can understand where a marketer is coming from, if you can understand, like, and you can empathize with kind of what their needs are, it makes you better at your job. So I think those are the types of skills that help no matter where you end up.
And Duke's going to be really thankful for that push for liberal arts education there.
You need it, right? I mean, that's the only way. There's never been a single like scientist that launched something completely by themselves, right? Like you need someone who's skilled at finance, you need someone who's skilled at business, you need someone who is skilled at and understanding like what people need and how to talk to people. And so it's always going to be a collaboration.
So I'm really curious, at what point, whether it was at Duke or in one of those like growth cycles at J&J, at what point did you realize, oh, okay, it's about these skills?
It's probably the first time I had to talk to somebody else about it, right? Like it's probably the first time where either there was an intern coming into the lab or, right, like there was someone else who was, new to the lab and trying to figure out kind of how do they jump from one. Like you don't even realize that you've learned these things until you hear it coming out of your mouth that you're saying it to somebody else and you're like, I actually know something maybe. But I think it's almost like when you're starting to counsel other people and helping other people realize and coaching other people and helping them realize that they have this huge wealth of capabilities that they might not be listing on their first draft of their resume, right? And those, and in some ways, like those are the capabilities that make them special, right? Because anybody else can check a box that, like, they know how to do an ELISA, or they know how to, you know, write a paper, and but it's all the other things that make you an awesome asset to a lab, a startup, you know, a big company. And I think noticing those things and talking about those things in an interview is super helpful.
Definitely. I think that's hard for our students to do sometimes, to make that connection until they have an experience like what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice?
I mean, I think taking a look at, because I've heard some people be like, oh, you know, I was a waiter one summer, or I worked at a supermarket, or I worked at this, and they almost want to drop those things off their resumes. But you learn things in those experiences, and it's almost like everybody should have a customer service experience in their life, because it teaches you that human beings are not always like the same, right? And people have different needs, and sometimes people don't think the way you would think. And so start thinking about each one of your experiences in terms of what did you learn technically, or from a capabilities, but also what did you learn about yourself, or what did you learn about an organization or people, and how does that help you get things done, right? Because getting things done requires interactions with individuals, it requires influence, it requires like thoughtfulness and respect and all these other things that's why people like working with people, and you know, sometimes that's the better way to get things done at the end of the day.
Yeah. And you touched on a number of things involving engaging and interacting with people to grow. Yeah. So what have been your go-to resources, maybe your go-to tools to kind of develop as a professional?
Yeah, I would say, I guess a couple of things. So one is make sure you have, I would counsel people to make sure you have a network of people they trust, right? And that could be peers, right? That could be professors that you've had, teachers that you had, other colleagues in the organization. I think it's important to have people outside of your like leadership chain, like the people who you report into or like your direct boss. It's great. You should have a great relationship with them, a transparent, candid relationship. But you need people outside too, because you need to be able to have like that candid conversation of, yeah, you might need to do something differently, or really like you might need someone to kind of like tell you like, look, it's not them, it's you. You could change some of these behaviors, or tell you that, hey, look, you have these opportunities elsewhere, you should go. So I think that's one, is kind of building an awesome network, and not really this formal mentoring network, just people you can call up and be like, hey, I have a question, right? And you can use, like I have friends that I call for different reasons, right? Like I have friends that I'll call when I have like an organizational challenge. I have friends that I call and be like, you know, how would you approach this in your life? Like people who know startups, people who know, you know, HR issues. So I think that's one. Another thing is there's awesome books, right? There's no shortage of really interesting books on negotiation, on influence, on strategy, right? Like you can get a business school education for pretty cheap on Amazon. Although the business school people would be pissed I said that. But you can get a good start, let's put it that way. And so I think that's huge. And there's also some really great resources online, right? Like and no matter what, like if you're thinking of a career change or you're thinking of something else, like there's industry trade groups, there's recruiters, there's all these people that are, like I think people forget how many people out there want to help, right? Like, and if you just approach somebody in a respectful way and be like, I'm genuinely interested in this area, but I have questions, and you're not being extractive, right? Like you're truly, people want to, like everyone's done a job search, everybody realizes how hard it is, right? So I think people are naturally empathetic and they want to help you. So give people an opportunity to help.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. In our office, we call those helpful humans.
Yeah, and more than not, right? Like people are pretty helpful.
Yeah, exactly. And tell me a little bit too, you know, from your perspective as you started to grow in your career and you look at people transitioning or making that transition where you were, tell me a little bit about now what you advise them or how you tell them to kind of prepare themselves.
When you're entering a new role, I tell them to be patient with themselves for the first 3 months, because you are operating, you don't know a lot, right? Like, and I think there's a lot of people, even senior people, like when they transition, you're like, oh my goodness, I need to make an impact immediately. But you're not able to yet. And it's almost like you need to understand that it's okay, you're going to be a net taker for 3 months or 6 months. But and everybody expects that. Like there's not a single person that starts, like I have an individual starting on my team on Monday. right? And I know basically I'm not expecting anything out of him for at least 3 months because he's going to have to talk to everybody. And I think just being at peace with the fact that like, you don't have to stress. It's okay, right? Like just take your time, talk to as many people as you can. Like make friends and just friendly, like 15 minutes. Like, what do you do? Like just go around and ask people like what their job is, so you can then start making links of like, okay, this is how the business works. This is how this company works. This is how stuff gets done. And then you'll find yourself getting more and more comfortable with like what is actually happening and how I can actually get stuff done and how I can add value. But I would say definitely just be patient and just talk and just be open and listen. Listen more than you talk in the beginning.
That's always hard,
Yeah.
for sure. Especially, I think there's, Duke is really rigorous, and so I think there's this feeling. We call it effortless perfection in our office.
Yeah. Seen it.
So and I think that can easily translate to
Right.
That first part of a career, or really any pivot within a career.
Right. Yeah. You're not. It's people, and I guess the other thing is people. They hired you, right? Like, and since they hired you, they already believe in you, right? Like, you don't have to reprove yourself every day, right? Like, you're going to do good work. They trust that you're going to do good work. But I feel like so many people are caught up in like, I need to prove myself. And then sometimes it could turn into, I need to be better than this person, and then it turns into competition rather than collaboration. And that ends up being self-defeating at the end of the day. So it's almost like, feel good about that you're there and take the time to learn and then, take a breath.
Yeah. The curiosity is like the fallback, right? It's like the thing that's there that will catch you. Just breathe and lean on curiosity and just getting to know people.
Exactly.
So I have to ask about ambiguity because we've been like talking all around it. I don't know if we've actually used that word yet.
Sure.
How risk averse are you?
I have had the privilege of taking many personality tests when you work for a big company. And so I'm considered not risk averse at all. And I'm also an optimist, which can be a bad combination because I'm usually the person like, let's try it. It will definitely work. Let's go. So the way I've learned and been coached to fix that is to just always have a plan B, right? Like you can take the risk, you can assume it's going to work, but also think about what you might do if it doesn't. Yeah. Right. And so I tend to be more risk tolerant than most people, which is actually a challenge for me at work because I need to remember that if I'm in a room with 10 other people, most of them are more anxious than I am about the project. And if I just assume like, we're all great, let's go, I'm typically running in front and nobody's following. Okay. Right. Yeah. And so I think regardless of where you fall on that spectrum, and there's successful people at all ranges of that spectrum. So it's not saying there's one avenue of success than another. Like I wouldn't be a startup founder if you're highly risk averse. So you might want to look for a different career. But I think as long as you acknowledge it and you know kind of what that impact is on the people around you and what that impact is on like how you're making decisions, I think that you then can kind of see how to moderate or change the way you're approaching the organization. Or you pick a buddy that you're like is the polar opposite of you and you run something by him and be like, okay, am I crazy? Yeah. So.
When I saw your job title, Future of Self-Care it's part of your job title. Right. It made me think of all the ambiguities that are also in the career world. Yeah. I mean, we are preparing students for roles that don't exist yet. Yep. And so I think that's really good advice in terms of how to maneuver, whether you're working in, a really ambiguous job role or whether you're just trying to deal with unclear expectations at work, right? The idea, I think, is helpful across the spectrum of, lean on your peers, get a buddy, that kind of thing. I think that's really awesome and helpful.
Yeah, and I think depending on the career you're in and the type of job you're in, the plan B could also be if this company doesn't work out, right? Like, where else should I go? Like, and either you keep your LinkedIn profile active, you keep connections across other industries. You're leaving here with friends, right? And all your friends are going to do things too. And they're a huge resource because if I just think about my network of friends, like they've scattered across many, many different industries, right? And so you can end up calling them for questions and thinking about like, what is your plan B? You know, if you don't like your job or your job doesn't work or, right, like people reorganize. So I think that's important too, of thinking about like, what else could you do if this doesn't work?
Yeah. It covers a lot of columns there, a lot of range. Yeah.
So we've talked about that plan B, but let's talk a little bit about that plan A.
Okay.
How do students prepare for that? How do they prepare for that new role, and what makes them a great early talent?
Yeah. So I think one of the things, and we even look for this in interns, like when we're looking for interns, is I think there's intellectual curiosity, right? Like, and just willingness to learn. I think those are the two, like, the baseline things, because almost everything else is coachable or trainable, right? But you want somebody who you feel like really wants to be there, really wants to learn, you know, and is just generally curious, and curious from the fact of like, okay, they're interested and they want to learn, but also curious because, especially in science, sometimes that's how discoveries are made, right? Like you have somebody who's observant and curious and thinking about how to go. But I think in terms of a plan A and like getting in and making a great first impression, I think there's a couple things. I think one is have a really good conversation with your manager and maybe your manager's manager in terms of like, what does success look like? What do they actually want to, like, what are their goals for the group, right? What's the goals for your organization? What's the goals for your group? And then what are their goals for you? And make sure you hit on, like, that's the bare minimum, right? Like you have to kick butt at that. And then as you're talking to everybody else in the organization, like find out kind of like, do they have any needs? Like I think I'm trying to think of like a couple of the cool projects that I got pulled into were just when you have a side conversation with someone and they're like, oh, I just got pulled into this. And they're like, we just had this issue or like, this is happening. And you're just like, well, I know a little bit. Do you need any help? And so you end up just, you still have, where people get in trouble is you still have to do your day job, right? But then if you're able to do that other stuff, you start making connections, other people know you, and then sometimes that's how you get another job opportunity or you get to move around the organization. And so I think, but that's part of networking, going back to the beginning, is like just talking to people and finding out what do they do, where do they need help, what are they working on, and if you have ideas, I think no one's going to say no to like free help and no one's going to say no to good ideas. I would say those two things. And then, you know, I had my first boss told me that it kind of varies throughout your career, but she basically subscribed to what she was calling like the 80-10-10 rule, right? Like where 80% of the time when you're at work, you're doing your job, right? 10% of the time you're thinking about how you can make yourself better. And that's either more reading, skills training, right? Like doing trainings, reading books. And then the other 10% is telling people what you're doing, right? Like, and a little bit of self-promotion, not in the way where you're like screaming at the top of your lungs of like, look how great I am, but just making sure that people and this could just be like, you know, a weekly email to your boss and be like, here's what I accomplished this week. Or, you know, having the time when you stop somebody, when somebody stops you in the elevator, is like, how's things going? You don't just say great. You say, you know, it's great. I'm working on this, this, and this. I'm super excited, right? Like take that opportunity to share why they should keep you here, right? Like, and why you're kind of an awesome person to keep around. And so just, no one's going to do that for you, right? Like no one is you don't have a cheerleader like they don't hire anybody to be your own cheerleader, right? Like, so you have to do it yourself and you have to do it in a way that's genuine and honest. But you need to remember that like, no one's going to know what you're doing unless you let them know what you're doing. And so just always keep that in the back of your head.
I like that. 80-10-10. I've never heard that.
Yeah, we might steal that.
Yeah, go for it.
That's awesome.
It's yours. I stole it from somebody else, so we'll just pass it on.
It's helpful info.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you got to, because I think people forget, because you'll put your head down and you'll work. And look, that works for grad students here too, right? Like, because I think that happens here, right? Like all you think about is your thesis and your PhD, and you forget that like there's the rest of the world going on, right? Like, and you need to make sure that you're ready as soon as your PhD's over.
That's a interesting. I think this is a good segue to how did you know that academia was no longer right for you?
Yeah. And it's funny because I still do think sometimes like, oh, what if I stayed, right? Like, you know, because it wasn't a chance at all where I was like, oh, this stinks, I need to get the heck out of here. Like that wasn't what drove me. It was more looking for, I guess, a little bit more risk, a little bit more diversity of projects, right? Like I think one of the things where I wasn't thrilled about is saying like, okay, am I going to do this exact type of thing for the rest of my career? And to me, I needed a little bit more variety. And so that was one of the things I think thinking about getting things into market was also interesting, and working. I also really enjoy working with people. Like sometimes I'm the only R&D person in the room, right? And so I work a lot with marketing. I work a lot with regulatory and quality and supply chain. And I like having kind of diversity of backgrounds and talking to people from wide diversity of backgrounds. So I think those characteristics kind of drew me outside of academia. But I've also made sure that one of the core components of every role I've had is external and external innovation, where I still get to talk to people who are in academia because they're great. They're super smart. They're passionate. They have amazing ideas. They think differently than the corporate folks do. And so to me, it's been a nice balance. I think I would miss it if I lost that. But that was kind of what drove me. Admittedly, it was scary because inherently the people who are in academia are the least qualified to help you find jobs out of academia because they don't know that world. I had an amazing PhD advisor who was like, well, look, he's like, I don't know much about it. He's like, but I have this, and this person who's in that area, and why don't I just give you their names? And so he basically gave me a whole bunch of names, and I just reached out to him and said, hey, look, I'm not looking for a job. I just want to learn. Like, what is it like? Like, what do you look for in people? Like, almost like this conversation we're having here. It's like, what do you look for in people? Like, how do people break in? And it was super informal, and I had all those conversations, and literally nothing came out of them. Like, not one job offer, anything. And eventually, one or two things came through, and then one of the women I talked to first called me 6 months later out of the blue. I had a job offer in hand. I was about to take it in DC. Call me out of the blue and say, hey, I have a position on my team. Would you be interested? And within 2 weeks, we completely changed from like, hey, we're going to move to DC to we're going to move to, New Jersey. And so you never know. And like a lot of these things, like you put a line in the water and you kind of forget about it and it comes, but you got to put the lines in the water, right? Like, and you got to give everything like 6 to 8 months to marinate. Because I just know, even like our hiring cycles, it's like by the time I say like, okay, I need somebody on my team, here's the job posting gets approved, the job posting gets posted, right? Like you're 4 months. So like things move slow. And so give yourself that time.
Definitely. I think in a lot of like time frames, students hold 2 weeks as like, not all the time, but 2 weeks is like that like special magic window of time. Definitely a month. After a month, it's like, oh, I didn't get it. I'm not going to hear back. So we spend a lot of time saying, don't give up on that just yet. Just hang on. Right.
Although I would say, if you know anybody on the inside, anybody at all, like if you can find all through your LinkedIn contacts, and you can find anyone that's a second level contact or somebody knows somebody, most companies or even the small companies, there's a way to have like an internal referral. And actually some companies actually compensate people if your internal referral gets hired.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So there's a financial incentive of actually finding talent. But if you can find somebody, because like the way it works is, so like if I just posted the role, I'll be working with a recruiter. Posting will go out, and then you'll have, so when you look at a job posting, there's things that are required and there's things that are preferred. By law, if you don't have something that's required, they can't look at you for the role, right? Like, and actually sometimes like you'll screw up a job description and put something required that you didn't think was required, and you literally have to pull the entire job posting down. So, but when you're looking at things like, you gotta make sure you have the required. If you only have like half the preferreds, awesome. Like job postings are imaginary. Like there's not a single person in the world that hits every job posting, right? Like it's made for it's like made for a unicorn. It doesn't exist. But if you're able to do that and you hit all the requires, and you know someone at the company, they can call the hiring manager or the recruiter, and you basically get through the first machine filter. You get first, and you almost get it. You're not going to get the job, but you'll get an interview. And so I think that's probably the most effective thing to do within 2 to 3 weeks after you apply, to make sure, because typically what will happen is those postings will be open for 7 to 14 days. They'll get the first slate. If the first slate is awesome, they might stop at the first slate, and they might not pull again. So it's important to, when you see a posting, it might only be up for 7 days. So apply quickly, and then try to follow up with anybody you know. It could be a narrow, but then it could take 3 months to actually hire. But it is important to go quick in the beginning.
Yeah. These processes are fascinating because I think while they're all generally the same, every company is a little bit different.
Yep.
Every process is just a little bit different. So I think this information is really helpful to our students too. Would you be willing to talk a little bit about what you look for in early candidates?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll do it in 2 stages. So one, just looking at resumes, right? Like I think the resume is important, not just to show that you have technical skills, but how you've actually applied them, right? Like, so examples are awesome. So if you can put examples on your resume of like, not just saying like, oh, I know SolidWorks, but like I've used SolidWorks to build this, and this, in this competition or whatever, like just showing that it's not just, you didn't just put it there as a buzzword. And so I think examples are awesome. And that typically, those are the resumes where you're like, okay, here's the type of person I'm looking for. This person looks really qualified. This person looks like they actually get stuff done, right? Like they've actually translated and done things in real life. And then at the interview, I look for people who tend to know something about the company. Like you've done actually research on the company. You've done research on the job. You've maybe looked at people's backgrounds on LinkedIn to see kind of like what the type of role is. They're able to answer questions in a way that shows kind of they understand the question and can give a really good example of how they, I would say just really good tangible examples that show that they're open, that they're willing to share, that they're willing to share things that went well and things that didn't go well and what they learned from that, right? Like I think even if it's an awful example of like a failure or something, but if you can be like, hey, look, I took that, I learned, and here's why I'm different now. Those answers are awesome, and then I think having questions at the end that just show engagement and show that like you're truly interested in the role. And these are questions that, and even if they're questions of, hey, look, I saw this would be something I'd be concerned about. Can you answer this question? Because it shows that you're putting yourself in the role and being like, hey, look, I'm actually really thinking through this. I might actually want to be here, but here's what would need to be true for me to be there. And so I think that's great. Sending a note afterwards is always, I mean, just good manners. And it does help. Because the other thing that's happened, and we actually just did this, we had a person who was second place, not because of his performance, but because just the other person had 1 or 2 characteristics that just were a better fit for the role. But I took his name and basically sent his resume out to like 6 other people who were looking for roles, because that happens too, because there's always, so like if you make a good impression, it might not be the end just because you didn't get that job.
Wow. Yeah, there's so much at play, and I wish, we were able to share so much more insight, but I kind of do have a question about looking ahead.
Okay.
And looking ahead at your industry and looking ahead as the talent comes. We kind of touched on what the timeline and time frame can look like and can be all over the place, but you're also planning ahead.
Yes.
And you're trying to figure out, all right, this is what I want moving forward because this is what I see the industry's doing. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say in healthcare broadly, right, like whether it's pharma or consumer products or medical devices, I think you're seeing a blending of disciplines a lot, right? Like you're seeing diagnostics move into supplements, right? You're seeing digital health, across the board. Robotics are becoming more and more, but that's not just like, okay, I need to understand robotics. If you think about robotics, it's everything from, how do you make sure that there's industrial design and human factors and quality control and safety and thinking about ethics and all these things. Like the way that healthcare is changing and the way that COVID basically just accelerated tons of trends, right? In terms of like, now telemedicine is much more, it was always around, but now people are more comfortable with it and people are more comfortable with talking to a doctor on a screen. And now it's like, okay, well, if we're going to start moving more and more healthcare into the home and making it so we can potentially increase access and equity in healthcare. And I think that's another thing that's super important too, because you can do fancy healthcare for the 1%, right? And I think that happens a lot because you have these new gadgets and they're $400 or $500 and they work, but they only work for a small percentage of the people. But so I think if you're able to think about, okay, what are the true healthcare needs? How am I doing something that's truly evidence-based? And I'm doing things in a way that is increasing access, increasing equity, and it's actually increasing health outcomes. And so, but that requires kind of a deeper understanding than I know how to make a device, right? Like it requires an understanding of like, well, what does health policy in this country look like? Like what have traditionally been the cause of health disparities? Like how does data science play in? Like what's responsible data science and what's responsible ML and AI, right? Like, and what are the inherent biases in that whole, like I think having a deeper understanding of all of the emerging trends in healthcare, not just saying I can do it, because anybody can write code, right? Like anybody can build a device, but to actually truly have the impact that you hope to and want to in people, you need to understand it like at a behavioral science level, a sociological level, right, an ethical level. And I think having a little bit of a nuanced background across all those things, if possible, right, like if you can figure out how to get that experience, I think that makes candidates, even better and more. I think having strong specialized technical skills, but then also having a generalist base of knowledge, I think will also help you in your career too, because that job you apply for, when you're 22 or 26 is going to be a different job by the time you're 30, right? And if you can draw on, I think, even if I think through my career, right, like I've drawn on some of my engineering background, some of my medical background, some of my biology background, some of my immunology background, but at all different times, right? And so being able to pull on that, and like also the random accounting course I took while I was here and the economics course I was here, like that's come in too, right? And I think that's helped. And so I think that that helps you prepare, because we don't know what's going to happen in 5 or 6 years. But if you can touch on it, at least be familiar, because you can always teach yourself more, right? But at least if you, I think where people get in trouble is when they don't even have, it's almost like the unknown unknowns, like when you don't even have an awareness that something could be an issue. And there's tons of examples of how stuff has gone wrong over the past 6 or 7 years of not having awareness of things. But yeah,
I appreciate that sentiment, and I think a lot of people will, in the sense that, we discuss what looks good on a resume, but also beyond the resume, life exists.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're still able to address and answer a lot of those questions in your work today, which is great.
No, and I just to build on that point, right? Like life does exist outside of a resume, and it exists outside of work too. And I think that's the other thing that when you're looking at careers and looking at jobs, right? Like there's more to life than just working, right? And I think thinking through opportunities through that lens as well is like, does it fit into your life? Does it fit into like what you want? I mean, at some point in your career, right? Like you might say like, whatever, I'll work 60, 70 hours a week. Like that's fine, short term, but you should think about what else do I want to be doing? What else am I giving up, right? Like what does balance look like? What's important to you? And just don't realize that there's more than just the job, because you could take the job could be awesome, and the rest of your life could be not as awesome.
Yeah.
Companies are getting better with that, right? I think generally, I think people are respecting that, but it's something when you're evaluating job opportunities, when you're evaluating companies, right? Like the morals and ethics of the company and the people at the company matter too.
For sure. I think we see, at least I'll say in some of the student appointments that I have, those are very real questions that come up more and more. Good. How can I learn if this company really means what they're saying on their site? If they say they care about their employees or there really is work-life balance, how can I verify that? Yeah. And so it's always an interesting conversation and adds to the research that, we do and help guide the students through. So it's definitely...
And there's no harm. I mean, you can turn everyone knows the behavioral questions that everyone gets asked in interviews. Like, tell me a time when this happened. Tell me a time. I mean, you could, either during the interview or actually post offer, right? Like a lot of times if you do have an offer, you can say, hey, can I talk to 1 or 2 people at my level? And you can give them the same questions. Like, tell me about a time when something didn't go right at work. How is it handled? Yeah. Right? Like how does work assignments get passed on? How many vacation days do you actually take a year? Right. I mean, that's... and if they're not making those people available to you, at least it's a risk, right? Like it's a little bit of a red flag, because if everything's great, those people would hop on the phone and be like, yeah, please come. But that's, you have the right to do that.
That's really empowering, I think, for our students to hear. That's really great.
Because look, as soon as you get that job offer, the balance of power changes, right? Because it is a huge pain in the butt to restart the job search process, right? From the company's point of view. And they also just basically got everybody to interview, and they got everyone excited to say, we're going to hire to this candidate. We want this candidate. We love this candidate. So I mean, no, you can't be unreasonable and be like double my salary, right? Like, but I think saying like, hey, I'm really excited too. I was like, I just want to check one or two other things. Is there somebody, like if you're asking for very minor, like half hour of somebody's time, that's totally reasonable, right? And it's going to make you feel better about, taking a job and more excited about taking a job. Like you have, like the power is in your hands the minute you have the offer.
For sure. For sure.
And you've given us so many important nuggets here. I want to give you one last opportunity to kind of share out for the next generation of Duke graduates, whether it be undergrad or graduate school, something that you feel like is incredibly important to know as they make their next steps.
Rudi, you
No pressure.
I was
No
going to say,
pressure.
no
pressure.
told me that question in
I
advance.
kind of led up to that a little bit.
I think one of the things that I wish I knew more of when I left Duke was just the diversity of options that are out there, right? Like I think you think your choice set is the 6 jobs you know of, right, when you leave. And it's like the sheer diversity of types of opportunities, and even within these opportunities, the way different companies kind of package up these opportunities and give you, it's just amazing, right? Like, and I think, so one of the things that I guess I would say is just think hard, and you don't have to do this before the job search process. This can be part, like, as you're going through a job search process, I think it helps because it helps you clarify kind of what you really like, because as you start talking to companies, you're like, I didn't really like that, and why not? But just be really thoughtful on, like, what do you like doing? What would make you happy? Like, where do you see, because you can think about, like, okay, I took this job. Where do you think it's going to help me get in 2 years, right? Like, is there a new place for me at that company, or do I go, or is it a way to learn and I take those skills and then go somewhere else? But I just thinking about, like, you can change jobs every 2 years or every year, right? Like, and they can be different jobs, and you're not writing anything in stone, right? And so the risk you're taking with choosing a job, if it feels right to you and you think you're interested in it, like, it's always changeable. Like, you can try it, and if it works, it's awesome. But if it doesn't work, then you just, you try something else, and there's an infinite number of jobs out there and an infinite number of companies, and there's so much choice and so much opportunity, especially for Duke grads. And I think just walking into it, that mindset, because I think it reduces the stress a bit, and it also allows you to kind of feel, I guess, a little bit more empowered to, like, I'm going to go work a place where I want to work, right? Like, rather than just saying, like, oh, I need to take something because I need to fill it, right? Like, there's, start your search early, talk to as many people as you can, because then I think it gives you a chance to explore what could be. And then and then basically, look, there's only going to be a finite number of opportunities available, but at least you feel like you kind of sampled everything. And then you're able to choose with kind of a more informed choice set. But I think I remember feeling very stressed and being like, oh my goodness, there's only like 4 or 5 careers I can choose from. And, and if I don't pick one of those 4, what else am I going to do? And, like, I'm not working in any of those 5 careers that I thought I was going to pick in the beginning, right? And so, and it's been great, and I have friends that have gone and done, multiple career changes and are thrilled and are really happy. So, and I don't think if you asked us when we were leaving Duke what we would be doing, like, now I'm 40, right? And so, like, if would I be doing, 20 some years or 20 years after leaving Duke? You wouldn't have been able to predict it. So I think, make the best decision you can given the information you have at the time, and then go with it.
This has been a really great conversation.
No, I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks
for having me.
Yeah, and thank you on behalf of the Career Center. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, no, happy to help any way I can.